It's a very small crew today on the first ever webinar. Feel free to flick your cameras on. We've got Brendan Newton and Craig Ferguson are the first to join us. So we'll get straight into things. I've got Kelly Elkin and Amy Lowe here from Piping Hot. They're going to do our first ever Sustainable Supply Club lunch break webinar. We may be moving them to another time of day with the huge response we've got to a lunchtime webinar, but we are recording, so people will be able to enjoy this at their own leisure later. But thank you to those who have been able to turn up today. I'll kick off with a quick acknowledgement of country. I'm coming to you from Yamaji country on the midwest of WA, Geraldton to be precise, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and recognise that sovereignty was never ceded and that we are all sitting on stolen land in Australia. So I'd like to acknowledge, the First Nations people of this country. We've got a new person just popping in. Stefan, great to have you as well. I will stop talking. I'll in a second, I'll let you know that the Sustainable Supply Club, we couldn't be more stoked with how many people have responded to this initiative by Surfers for Climate. We do believe that building a Sea Roots movement for positive climate action starts in the industry, and we're going to be very pleased to announce in a couple of days a couple of new industry partners that are going to be added to the club, and that's really cool to see growth in the companies that want to work with us and also provide value to you who've paid you $99 to support our work. We're very pleased with how this is progressing, and we couldn't thank you enough for being the first people to jump on board the party wave, as we like to say. I will now pass over to Amy and Kelly, and I'll let you know that at the end of this webinar, we're going to do a quick guess a number to announce the first winners of the monthly giveaways. So stay tuned for that. And I'll now hand over to Amy and Kelly to take over things and do their presentation on behalf of Piping Hot.
Thank you very much, Josh, and nice to see some new faces. We just wanted to start with acknowledging where we're presenting from. We're on the Gadigal land of the Eora Nation, and we acknowledge people past, the leaders past, present and future. What we wanted to do was tell a little bit of the story for Piping Hot, which I think a lot of people are familiar with Piping Hot in the 70s and 80s, and maybe a little bit less about what we've been doing more recently. And we really thank Surfers for Climate for encouraging us to tell more of our story and what we've been up to. It's been a bit of a ride, and we're excited about what we're doing in the future. So with such a small group, we also encourage you to ask any questions of what we're doing, and I guess we really value feedback as we kind of embark on something that's fairly ambitious. So feel free to jump in or ask any questions in the chat. I'm going to share screen. Okay, is that all visible for everyone? Great. So, Piping Hot for Clean Oceans. Piping Hot has its origins, like it's obviously, it started in 1975 with surfers who really wanted to spend more time in the ocean. And it's really been one of those brands that's been a quiet sleeper in the Australian surf industry, I would say, kind of moving into a different territory to what the other major brands that started around that time ventured into. And 5 years ago, the brand had a new team and a bit of a new outlook. And at that time, we were looking ahead and thinking about what does the future hold for the surf industry, and what can we do to contribute to it? What can we do to make our work more meaningful and Piping Hot, the brand, more meaningful? Let me and kind of where we went to was back to the origins of, I guess, the ocean and spending more time in the ocean, and I guess encouraging more people to connect with surfing and I guess the whole Australian lifestyle. So at the same time, we really came back to oceans being the most valuable asset. In 2015, there were a lot of reports about the unprecedented levels of coral bleaching in the Great Barrier Reef. The UN was strongly reporting on the degradations of the ocean due to climate change, due to plastic pollution. A whole lot of issues were really starting to have some very, very strong evidence around what the future held for the oceans, which was essentially has been the lifeblood for Piping Hot as a brand since 1975. And at that same time, we really needed to acknowledge that the fashion industry was a pretty major contributor to that problem. And in particular for us, we looked at, I guess, you know, some pretty growing issues for industry pollution from the fashion industry. More recent statistics show that over 35% of all microplastics released into the world's oceans come from the shedding of microfibers from synthetic. So plastic pollution, obviously, as well, with that statistic of by 2050, there'll be more plastic in the ocean than fish. And then just generally the ocean health and, again, climate being such a, I guess, climate change, but having such a devastating impact on marine life, and our industry also leading to waste and contributing to that. And that's where, you know, Piping Hot for Clean Oceans began. And we set about trying to work out how a fashion brand or a surf brand could actually contribute to solutions to improve, I guess, all of the issues around pollution, and what unique way could we be part of the future for the oceans. When we looked at what the, I guess, where we sat within the surf industry, we've been, like, generations of Australians have really grown up with Piping Hot. And we had this really unique position in being able to be accessible for Australians across the country. And that, I guess, accessibility, brand recognition, the trust that Australians have for Piping Hot, we saw as a real opportunity to make sustainability affordable and also to protect our oceans. So we're going to talk a little bit about how that impacts our framework and what that means, because I think scalability for us is really important. We've really found that there aren't a lot of solutions for kids, and it's typically kids who are really engaged in, I guess, what innovative solutions are out there. How do we, you know, recycle more and improve products? It's, you know, they're the ones who are usually influencing their families to be able to engage in new behaviours that are better for the environment and care deeply about marine life. Kids are our customers as well. So that was another aspect that for us was really important to be able to infuse in our strategy. In terms of making sustainable fashion affordable, there are many different ways that we could have approached this, and it's actually pretty overwhelming, because when you look at the fashion industry, there are just so many major issues with the systems that have existed for generations, and we know that they're not at all environmentally friendly. But at the same time, there are and what the future holds for Piping Hot is pretty great. What I'm going to do is pass over to Kelly, who's our sustainability manager, to talk through our framework for impact, which is how we've been able to, I guess, set forward a bit of a progressive pathway for what Piping Hot can do to make sustainability affordable.
Hi everyone, as Amy said, I'm Kelly. I'm the sustainability manager. So as Amy was introducing, you know, some of the issues that we're facing in the fashion industry, a lot of people don't really sort of think about fashion as having a huge impact. But as you can see from some of the stats that Amy put forward, and those are just a small handful of all of these big issues that the fashion industry is causing, we actually do have a significant part to play. So, you know, just quickly touching on a few more stats, you know, we've got 8%, 8 to 10% of carbon emissions come from the fashion industry. About 20% of the industrial wastewater in the world comes from the fashion industry. So, and then we haven't even really touched on the social impact that happens to a lot of people in developing countries. So for us to really tackle sustainability in a meaningful way, we need to develop a holistic framework. So there's so many different aspects as to how we can approach this, but by having a clear mission to try and protect our oceans and ensure that this our clothing was still accessible to a wide audience here in Australia, we needed to sort of break it down, I suppose, and tackle each issue. So our framework is based on the Sustainable Development Goals, and there's 5 different aspects in how we approach that. So one is from design perspective. So 80% of the environmental impact comes from your design choices. So for us, it's really about educating our designers and making sure that they understand the choices that they're making in terms of what kind of material, what kind of design, you know, versatility, quality, etc., all has an impact, and also that end of life. So our focus on design is about making fashion circular. So instead of going from a take, make, waste model, we're talking about a more circular model. So looking at how we can design for disassembly, design for recyclability, prioritize recycled materials, and then look at how we can actually accept that product at the end of life. So, you know, having that product stewardship as well. And then we have materials, which is about choosing the materials, you know, in our supply chain. Materials make up for, I think, about 52% of the carbon impact in the supply chain. So choosing our materials is very important in terms of, you know, reducing our energy and emissions. And then we've got responsible production, which, you know, obviously from a sustainable point of view, we need to think about that as an environmental and a social impact. They're both connected. So we can't just go, okay, well, let's just use a whole bunch of organic cotton. Great, we're ethical. You know, we really need to think about who are those farmers downstream? How are they getting treated? Who are our garment workers? How are they being treated? Do we know, you know, everyone that's working in the supply chain? So we focus a lot on certified traceability. So we're talking about third-party standards, things like that, and traceability. So understanding, you know, from farm to product, who's making our clothes. And then innovating scale is a really big one for us. So as Amy was talking about, you know, we really want to make widespread difference. So we need to have cross-industry collaboration. We also need to do this in a large scale so that it can be affordable. And a big focus of that has been working with scientists, especially marine scientists, talking about microplastics, stuff like that. And then we have ocean advocacy, which I suppose is sort of like similar to the things that we're doing today, and like with working with Steps for Climate and stuff like that. It's really important that we can actually go beyond just our insular ethos, I suppose, or, you know, our industry, and have a bit of a broader perspective as to how we can actually tackle this with our community together. So yeah, that's in a nutshell how we approach everything. So I'll go in a bit more detail now as to each of those aspects and how we approach them from a practical perspective. So for us to really think about the choices that we need to make in each of those 5 aspects of the framework, we try and consider these 3 major aspects. So less water. So at Piping Hot, we choose fibres that have minimal water, no harmful chemicals released into waterways, and our dye houses recycle water, used in the production process. So it's a really important factor for us to consider, you know, what the impact is in terms of processes. And then we've got less energy. At Piping Hot, we source recycled fibres to reduce our carbon footprint, like I was saying before, and avoid the use of finite resources. So by using recycled plastic as a raw material, we offset using new petroleum to conserve energy. But we don't stop there. We see that, not only we have to move away from all synthetics, regardless of being recycled, but Amy will go into more detail as to how we're sort of progressing beyond just that. And then thirdly, we've got less waste. So at Piping Hot, we use recycled materials, as we've said, to divert waste from entering landfill and waterways. So it's really about trying to reduce the waste from the input. And then from the output, we apply circular design principles to allow for end-of-life recycling of garments. So, yeah. And then so we have all of these grand ambitions, but what's really important is that we actually measure our impact. So we need to understand how we're conserving resources that threaten the ocean and human health. We can't just sort of go out there and think that, oh, well, if we apply this, if we make this choice, then hopefully we'll have a lower impact, because that's what all the articles say. We need to dig deeper. So we work with third parties to be able to review what's called a life cycle analysis of a product. So a life cycle assessment is a tool for assessing the environmental impact of a product throughout its entire life. So from production to raw materials to disposal. So for us here, I've got an example of the product life cycle analysis of these men's volley shorts. So they're currently in store at the moment, and they're made out of recycled polyester, and they're printed. So these board shorts alone use 16 PET bottles. They take up 3.5 days of drinking water is saved. So that's a huge one, especially because we know that water resources is becoming an increasing problem. And then 1.8 kilometres of emissions are avoided. So obviously 1.8 kilometres doesn't sound great. We could turn it into meters. But if you think about it, this is just one board short. So, the amount of board shorts that we're producing, the amount of board shorts that everyone is producing in the industry, if we can make these lower impact choices, we can hugely reduce our emissions. So but we thought this is really important to be able to communicate with our customers, but also have a really clear measurement, I suppose, as a benchmark for us, so that we can continue to, I suppose, improve. And these will be on our swing tickets launching next year, which is exciting.
Yeah, I'm going to make just two additional points.
Okay.
One is that we've had our data, we've had external third parties independently assess our entire supply chain and our products in order to provide the data. So it's not something that we've gone and just calculated on our own. So it's a globally recognized methodology. And then on top of that, we are really focused on what part can we actually manage and control. And that part is really the design, the production. There's an element of absolutely we need people to be wearing these clothes as often as possible and putting them to good use. And that is one of the ways that Kelly will talk to later about what can we do as a whole to try and reduce the impact of the fashion industry. I guess we know that there are, people who will not be wearing their clothes so often, and that's going to impact the overall, environmental impact of our products. But we need to work on what are the parts that we can actually manage, how do we improve the industry as a whole and what we're contributing to.
Yeah. And if anyone has any questions, please pipe up. If I'm rattling off too fast, sorry. I'm just conscious that I often go on tangents. So, so as I was talking about before, materials is a huge one for us. So we hit a pretty important milestone in July this year, where 100% of all Piping Hot products contain materials that were either recycled, recyclable, renewable, or biodegradable. So every single product that is in store from July has a lower impact than using conventional fibers. So yeah, we yeah, we're pretty excited to be able to do that, especially, you know, with COVID and stuff like that, you know, complicating supply chains and everything like that. But yeah, we're also not going to rest on our laurels, and why we say low impact materials, we're going to try and hit for lower impact materials in the future. So yeah, we're going to keep going.
Yeah, and I guess the context for that as well is because we didn't start from scratch with this mission. So the brand was around, you know, what we had to do is transition our entire supply chain. We had to talk to every partner that we currently work with to get them on board with what we're doing, in relationship with our partnership with Target, which has been going since the 1990s, which has been significant because it's given us national distribution. We've been, you know, accessible in small regional towns across Australia, and potentially, you know, and that's been an incredible opportunity. But at the same time, customers at Target want to pay a particular price, and we have to compete within that environment. So we haven't been able to double our prices, and we have had very challenging conversations with Target and with other people who are involved in our business about, well, why would anyone want this versus they kind of want exactly what they bought last year. So if you go and invest in actually making it a better product, it won't actually impact any sales, it won't have any commercial success, but go ahead, it'll make you feel better. So for us to kind of move to low impact materials across every single category has actually meant that we've walked away from certain products that we have been known for and that we've had in the business for more than a decade, which has been a tough thing to do, but was really important for us to be able to make that commitment, because we see it as super crucial to the work that we do overall and what the future of the brand is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question on that one, if that's all right?
Yeah.
So like in terms of this engagement with your suppliers and these conversations and this kind of putting forward like the please change, can we change together? Can we help you with this? Is this something you can get on board? Like how much time does that actually take a company like Piping Hot? You know, what's that investment actually kind of look like if you quantify it?
So basically, in terms of the time that it has taken, I came on board in 2018, and I think that it was around a recycled polyester program was rolled out with I think around 50% of the products, and then we hit a milestone at the start of this year that it was 100% of our products. So, you know, it took about 2 years there. If you look at the supply chain as well, in terms of, like, I don't know how familiar everyone is on how long it takes from a design to actually get something produced, you're looking around 6 months at least. So even though we planted the seed a long time ago, it takes a little while to filter through the supply chain. Yeah, and like another example is, you know, recycled cotton here on the slide. You know, we went and visited our suppliers just before COVID hit, actually in 2019, in December, and we talked to them about recycled cotton, and we were like, look, we think this is the next big thing, you know. Obviously organic cotton is great, but recycled cotton actually uses far less water, it uses no pesticides, it helps a waste problem. But the technology wasn't widespread then. So we really had to get them on board to see that, you know what, this is going to be the next big thing, and really try and get their buy-in so that they could be convinced to go, okay, well, we can make this, we can invest in this, we can get our fabric mills to invest in this, and then we can see that we'll be able to actually get more suppliers on board and not just us, to make sure that it's cost effective. So, and another thing in terms of that investment is really getting the buy-in from a certification perspective as well. So that's something that I'll touch on later in this slide. But, you know, when we're transitioning to recycled materials, we don't want to just assume that everyone's doing the right thing. We have great relationships with our suppliers, but, you know, who knows, maybe some people want to cut corners. So we need to make sure that we have certification, and certification is expensive, especially for small producers. So we really need to show to them that we're committed long term for them to make that investment. So yeah, it's definitely, and sometimes sometimes it can be a battle, but it is really just going back to that why, and making sure that our suppliers all understand why we're doing it. And that goes with Target as well, you know, when we're trying to convince them as to why we're going on this journey and why we want them to join us. It goes back to those sort of that core mission.
I think there are quite a few constraints that we have, again, harking back to that we are, I guess, a big, we do have existing customers. We deal with a major retailer in Australia. That means that we can't afford to do a trial of a product, particularly say recycled cotton, where one of the challenges is durability. And so the product, that when we put it out in the market, it has to actually stand up to the test of every other product. It needs to actually be color fast. It needs to actually, you know, like we can't do a small run like where the quality is compromised in any possible way, because that's the end for our reputation within Target, with our customers. So when we do this, we have to do this really seriously. We have made significant long-term partners in our supply chain, and we are constantly challenging them to look at new innovations, to be introducing new techniques, we're asking them for we have very strange requests that no one else asks them for. Asking them where does your water go? How much water are you using? What does it look like? What kind of dye are you using?
How many grams is this? How many what percentage of waste do you have on the pattern making table? You know, like it's about I think they just see my phone call and go, oh no, what random obscure question is Kelly going to ask now? But it's cool for them as well, because they're learning a different way of doing things. You know, like it's about reiterating to them, you know, it's not just about being the fastest and the cheapest. We're talking about trying to like be the most innovative as well, and trying to do it the most environmentally friendly way. So I think that, you know, some of them are a bit more resistant than others, but I think that it excites them as well, because it means that, you know, they can be pioneers in this space. But yeah, like it's definitely not without the challenges. Like you'll see a lot of recycled cotton starting to come out there that's 100% recycled cotton composition. But the durability of that is questionable, you know, but for a smaller brand that doesn't necessarily need to have those rigorous tests to provide to a larger stockist, they can afford to do that. And maybe their customer is a bit more accepting of that. But, you know, for the, you know, customer, like say, you know, in Armidale, where I'm from, like, you know, to be able to go to a Target and get something that they've always gotten, that is always the, you know, the quality that they've been expecting, and then has that sustainability aspect is really important. We just can't compromise.
And I guess before we talk to our suppliers, we have made a very conscious decision, and it took us probably about 12 months since we kind of embarked on this journey, in that early stage, to really just reshuffle the focus of every single person within our business. So we're a team of 10, and to have a sustainability manager from a team of 10 is a pretty incredible commitment for a brand, because many businesses who have 10 times the number of people that we have do not have one. And again, that has enabled us to move more quickly than others, because from a top down throughout every part of our business, everyone is willing to just figure out a solution.
And like having the directors on board, you know, like that makes a huge help, you know, throughout, you know, working with businesses over the past more than a decade now. You know, you can make all of these grand ambitions and plans, but if the directors are not interested, we're only going to get a short-term band-aid solution, or some sort of like tokenistic capsule range. So, you know, it is really refreshing that, you know, from the general director, everyone on the board, and in the team being on this path, it makes it just so much easier, and we can work very agile, like very quickly. But yeah, so I mean, we touched on the recycled cotton, I suppose, and and as to why we chose it, but yeah, a huge part of it is because of water. We have saved 79.6 million since 2019, which is the equivalent of 31.84 Olympic swimming pools, thanks to using more sustainable cotton. So, and that's, I'm actually just waiting to get our figures for the rest of 2021, and I'm pretty sure it will be over 100. So yeah, it's quite significant. The cotton industry uses, it's one of the thirstiest crops. It uses about 10,000 litres of water per t-shirt. So yeah. And then recycled polyester, we touched on this before, but we see it as a way, not the only way, to tackle plastic pollution. So by repurposing single-use plastics, we can obviously extend the life. And because of that, we've been able to reduce not only waste, but also energy with 62% less energy. Yeah, and then this one is probably a lesser known one. Obviously, you've probably seen a lot of people who are making stuff out of recycled plastic bottles these days, but ethical viscose is a big one for us. So I think there's about 200 million trees are chopped down a year just for the fashion industry to turn into viscose. So for us, it was really important that our viscose fibres were using wood pulp that was sourced from responsibly managed forests, and a process using less energy and water compared to conventional methods. So for one of our partners, which Amy will touch on, Canopy, they are a non-profit that work towards protecting endangered and World Heritage forests from logging. So everything that we source for our viscose has to come from accredited suppliers from Canopy, and then we've gone beyond that as well. So we've introduced Ecovera, which is a lower impact viscose that saves a huge amount of water and energy. So for example, one of our products that's just like a general dress made out of viscose, by being Ecovera viscose, it saves over 100 litres of water. So yeah, again, if you think about the amount of dresses that we produce, that's a significant amount of water that we can save. It takes to make footwear. We're not just talking about one material, we're talking about lots of different materials and components. So we sort of embarked on this, I suppose, last year, where we committed to having 100% of our footwear had to have a recycled component in it. And then this year, we pushed that even further, and 100% of our footwear had to actually contain a biomaterial, which I'll go into now. So, you know, footwear has a huge environmental impact. You can't avoid using a lot of petroleum-based products. So we obviously prioritise recycled petroleum-based products, but we've actually introduced, so in August this year, I think, in store, 100% of our footwear actually contains bloom. So I don't know if anyone's heard of bloom, but bloom is a sustainable footwear solution made from repurposed algae biomass, and it's engineered to be used in the soles of shoes. So bloom-based shoes restore filtered water right back into the ecosystem, and the manufacturing process sequesters CO2 and purifies air for a cleaner, healthier ecosystem. So what's really exciting about bloom is that it actually, because we're using algae, which is generally like an issue because we have an excess amount of algae because of industrialization that's polluting our waters, we can actually, by harvesting that and using that as a material, we're not just doing less harm, we're doing more good. So we're being able to clean the water, we're able to clean the air, and so we're able to have a positive impact as opposed to just a lesser impact. If you get what I mean. But yeah,
we've committed to using it in all of our footwear soles from here on in addition to the recycled materials. And while it's not kind of the end solution, because we want to move away from using petroleum-based products completely, it does mean that we have a substitute within that mix that is actually, in addition to the recycled materials, has on its own a carbon positive kind of impact.
Yeah, it's exciting for us as well, because we get quite frustrated with we understand that a lot of solutions like recycled polyester and recycled petroleum and stuff like that, they're a stepping stone, but they're not necessarily 100% sustainable still. So by being able to work with this new material that can be scaled and can be implemented across a whole category is super exciting for us. So now I suppose I'll go into a little bit about our responsible supply chain. So obviously we can go, oh, well, we're super sustainable and we love the planet and everything. But we also need to understand the impact that we have on people. So the fashion industry is widely known for human exploitation, I could roll off some depressing stats, but I won't go into it today. But yeah, so for us, it's really important that we know who is making our clothes and making our footwear. So for us, that first step is ensuring that we have a clear picture of our supply chain so that we can improve and manage that social impact. So for us, we actually can trace our tier 1 to tier 3. So a tier 1 is the garment manufacturers. So those are the factories that are doing the cut, make, sew. Then our tier 2 suppliers are the material production. So like the fabric mills, the dye houses, the print facilities. And then tier 3 is the raw material and fiber processing. So yarn mills, spinners, fibers, processors, etc. So, and then we've got tier 4, which is the raw material cultivation or collection. So that's the farmers, the PET bottle collection, etc. So we have 100% transparency, traceability on our tier 1 to tier 3, and they're fully certified as well for all of our recycled materials. We know a lot, like I would nearly say the majority of our tier 4 in terms of who we're getting fibers from, but we don't have as much visibility yet, and that's my 2022 project is trying to trace those levels. And it can be a little bit difficult because if you're working with say cotton, for example, you've got all of these small little farmers that then take it from their villages to a main hub, and then that main hub buys it off them, and then they take it to the city, and then in the city they sell it. And so even though that person from the city might say it's my cotton, they're not necessarily the farmers. So it's about getting that sort of that level of traceability on such a granular level. It can be a little bit more difficult, but we're pretty proud that we have the full traceability from tier 1 to 3, as most brands only have traceability of tier 1, and some don't even have traceability of tier 1. So we feel like we've got far there, but we need to continue to do better. And then I suppose to sort of show our commitment in terms of traceability and transparency, this year we published 100% of our garment suppliers on the Open Apparel Registry, which means that it's available for all public. Anyone can look up where our garment suppliers are and who they are. So for 2022, we'll be publishing our tier 2. We might even publish our tier 3 by then as well. And then 100% of our garment and material suppliers have signed our code of conduct, which is based on the International Labour Organization's base labour code. So, that's talking about no child labour, no enforced work, a right to unions, freedom of association, etc. And then, we also implemented a policy this year, a responsible sourcing policy. So that's more focused around human rights and labour standards, and kind of sets us up as like almost like a checklist as to what suppliers need to meet in order for us to work with them. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, I'll keep going.
I might just add that there's kind of currently no real regulation for the fashion industry in this area. So it's really up to brands and retailers to determine what certifications, what regulations, or kind of what auditing procedures you want to implement. And for us, we're doing all of this proactively. It's really important to us. We want to be transparent. And, you know, initially we had some debates about whether or not that was going to be challenging commercially for us, because we're a pretty small brand in the scheme of things. We are, you know, Australia is a small market globally, and we're really putting ourselves out there as having a system, I guess, a traceable and kind of unique supply chain. So yeah, there's been a lot of work and a lot of discussion around that.
I'll touch very briefly on this because I'm also conscious of time, but that certification is really important for us. So in terms of that level of transparency, how do we know that those suppliers are actually the suppliers? Well, this is how we get it. A global recycle standard is an international standard, and basically it verifies that every supplier that we work with not only has the environmental and social standards that they have to meet with this standard, but it also verifies the transactions to ensure that we know that yes, they do produce this recycled material, but actually that recycled material, we have proof that it went to this supplier and then it went to this supplier and went to this supplier. So yeah, we're one of the only ones, if not the only ones in Australia that actually have full GRS certification from yarn to product.
Yeah, look, was really important to us. I guess we're so deep in the industry that we're really quite conscious of greenwashing, and it's important to us that we have someone else, like we can't just take our suppliers' word for what they're supplying to us. We wanted to be able to provide our customers with the confidence that we have of this verification that we're actually sourcing recycled material, because the fact is that in the production process, there's no real test at the very end that we can say, look, this is 100% from bottles that were used by people that are post-consumer waste. So there has to be a number of other checks and balances along the way for us to be able to provide that information with an element. Look, it's not foolproof. It's not, but it certainly goes a long way to be able to do that.
And I'll touch on it at the end. I've got a bit of a top 5 tips on how to consume more sustainably, and I'll go into that certification and how you can find out more.
This is kind of taking a little bit of a gear change from like the deep product journey that we've been on to kind of where we feel like we can make this contribution as a brand who's really accessible for families. And one of the things that is a real challenge for the fashion industry is that we've really become, as consumers, we've really become used to being able to buy clothes cheaply and conveniently whenever we want. We don't take for granted that we have Target as a partner, but we also see it as a pretty big opportunity to be able to make better clothes with lower impact, and to be able to, I guess, provide a bit of a gateway to participate in broader fashion industry change. And the more that we can drive our factories to be able to innovate, then other brands and retailers could jump on board. One example of this is that when we actually spoke to Target in 2016 about wanting to introduce recycled polyester for our swimwear, they said, we've seen a lot of the higher end brands introducing it into swimwear, but we don't know whether our customer would really relate to it. Plus, we think that we've only really seen it at that upper end. We're not prepared to increase our retail prices because that would be a massive loss to, won't service to their customers. So we did a lot of work to, I guess, remodel how we cost our products, like how we buy. So we ended up, I guess, shifting, how we source our recycled polyester. One example would be that we had to make all the buyers buy at one time so that we could bulk buy, I guess, the huge amount of recycled polyester in order to be able to share that cost across multiple items. And then the target team observed this. They recognized that it started to have greater value to consumers, and from the following year, they started to actually start sourcing recycled polyester themselves, when only 2 years before they were like, we're never going to do it. You're never going to be able to get it at an affordable price point. It's just not going to happen. I think we could probably do a whole webinar on this. So the microplastic issue is horrifying and something that we've really been investigating, exploring, discussing with scientists, really looking at what can we do to try and reduce our contribution to this issue. How can we actually eliminate microplastic shedding? So for those who aren't familiar with the issue, a single garment can produce more than 1,900 microplastics every wash. Up to 7,000 microfibers are released in just one wash cycle. And garment washing accounts for up to 80% of microfiber shedding in a garment's life cycle. So, as I said, alarming statistics about how we're consuming microplastics from seafood, from in our water, when we swim in the ocean, and there is still a lot that scientists don't know about microfiber shedding. And one of the leading scientists who actually discovered microfibers and microplastics in the ocean is at the University of New South Wales in Sydney. So we have contributed to research there where we can look at how does microfiber shed, what can we do to prevent that? And we're also looking at options to, I guess, create completely new biomaterials as an alternative to that have all the benefits of synthetic fibers, meaning they're great to surf in, great to swim in, they're durable, all of the things that we kind of expect from swimwear and from board shorts, but from a biomaterial source to eliminate the plastic component altogether. Yeah. We've got a lot more that we can talk about. As I said, it could be a whole thing, but I guess it's something we don't often talk to the wider community about because there's so much that needs to get done. And there is some really exciting research that Dr. Mark Brown and Marina Tedesco will be releasing hopefully before the end of the year with studies that they've done. There's actually, the biggest laboratory of washing machine testing for microfiber shedding is actually in Sydney, in Manly. And, they've got some really eye-opening results that will be coming through soon.
Yeah, it's a really tough one for us because, obviously it's like, well, we've said goodbye to some categories that aren't super sustainable for us, but in terms of swim and everything, and even wetsuits, that's a key part of our heritage. And it's like, well, we can't turn it back on swimwear, but also we can't just make it out of like recycled cotton or we can't go back to the days where we make it out of wool, or maybe we can, but like the technology has got to be there where it's sort of like that we don't have a high intense absorption, so that we're not weighed down by this like really heavy wetsuit, or swimsuit that morphs and stuff like that when it gets wet. So yeah, for us it's like about working with scientists to try and find a better solution, whether that be in biomaterials and stuff.
I guess just to touch on this briefly, and obviously, we're really proud to be kind of a part of this webinar and also to be able to support organisations like Surfers for Climate. We also kind of do some work with Sea Shepherd and have done beach cleans with Take 3 for the Sea. Participating in the industry in different sectors is really important to us, keeps us accountable. And I guess it keeps us learning, keeps us really aware of what the issues are globally and where innovation is going to come from. And we're quite transparent with our data, with particularly people within the fashion industry like Textile Exchange. We talked about Canopy. It's really hard to keep across all the different issues that our business and our industry really kind of bleeds into. And At the same time, we're doing a lot of work with different, I guess, exploring different scientific innovations, working with, as Kelly said, marine scientists and ocean scientists. We're an official partner of the United Nations Ocean Decade, which is the Ocean Decade, which supports ocean science for sustainable development, and kind of looking at what does the blue economy look like? Why do we need more investigations into ocean science? Because there's some incredible solutions that will come from the ocean that can actually, I guess, help to restore some of the systems that we've really kind of fucked up really over this period of time. And then the UN Global Compact as well, like we I guess, relying on that, I guess, that there's so many different people in this new area of sustainability, environmental science, ocean science, that we can tap into their skill set and accelerate our impact and, you know, drive better solutions that are more far-reaching.
So that's sort of a bit more, we've kind of finished up, I suppose, on talking about what we've been doing and what we've achieved. Please feel free to ask questions at the end or even email us if you want to find out more about Piping Hot impact and our journey and everything. But we wanted to also make sure that now we've probably hit you with a whole bunch of overwhelming stats on how crap the fashion industry is. You're like, well, what can we do as consumers? Or maybe you do have some involvement in the industry. But yeah, wanted to give you some just easy wins and as to what you can consider, I suppose, when you're looking at your wardrobe. So I suppose the main thing is really being educated, because as a conscious consumer, you can actually make a real difference. So, you know, obviously you've got the top-down effect where it's like, you know, governments and companies doing stuff, but what we've seen, especially with the rise of social media and everything, you know, companies care about what customers think. So we do have, we can make a real difference. So yeah, so number one is really just like, you know, so many people ask me, what's the most sustainable product that I can have? And it's like, well, it's actually already in your wardrobe. So, you know, just really it's about that, wearing what you already have, making the most of it, extending the life cycle of it. So, you know, make, do and mend, swap with your mates, buy secondhand, you know, extending the life cycle of a garment.
Don't wash it every time you wear it.
Yeah, you can really do a lot in terms of what you've already got. You know, making sure that, yeah, you always do cold wash. Like I think there's some stat about like 40% of carbon emissions in the end of life, well, like the user cycle is from that washing. You know, and then if you do want to buy new, you know, you just got to ask yourself, do I really need it? Will I wear it 30 times or more? Is it durable? Is it versatile? So those basic questions, which seem like, well, that's kind of common sense. But for a lot of people, it's not anymore, especially when we get presented on our phone every day. Wow, look at this amazing sale. And oh, that looks so good. I want that product. And so you just, you know, it's so easy to impulsively buy these days. So it's about just like slowing down, I suppose, and just being more conscious. Yeah, and then taking care of what you've already got. And then number two, so obviously if you are embarking on buying new, read the label carefully. So, you know, it's been great. Like over the past 15 years, we've seen a huge shift towards more sustainable fashion. But what's happened is with a lot of hype and popularity, you do get a ton of greenwashing. So one of my biggest beefs is natural fibers being sustainable fibers. Natural fibers doesn't mean anything. It just means that it started from a plant. It doesn't mean that the whole process is not drenched with chemicals and high carbon emissions. So, for example, and I mentioned this briefly before, cotton is one of the dirtiest crops on the planet. So it uses up to 25% of the world's insecticides and pesticides, and up to 10,000 litres of water to make just one shirt. So I'd just say favor organic or recycled cotton, hemp and linen. And then also, you know, if you're going down the viscose route, Ecovera is a great option. There's also another one called Live Eco. And then also obviously on the synthetic side of things at the moment, recycled polyester and recycled nylon are the options there. So, you know, don't be fooled by slogans. You know, have a look at what does natural fibers really mean to that brand when they're saying it? You know, because I think that it's one of the biggest greenwashing scams.
And just to jump in on that, some research came out last year, or maybe earlier this year, about microfiber. Microfibers that were found in the ocean, and they basically did testing in various different parts of the world. More than 50% of the microfibers that were found, or microplastics, were actually natural fibers coated with chemicals in the dye process or in the wash process. So it's not always synthetics that make up the microplastics, unfortunately. That was a bit scary for us, but it's also all of the processing that happens to garments in that.
Yeah, it just kind of highlights that, you know, even though you might have like a cotton garment that you think is natural, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not drenched in chemicals. Generally, it will be. I think about a teaspoon of pesticides are used per t-shirt, and it's still found on that t-shirt when you buy it. And we're not even talking about dyes and washes. We won't go down that route today because it can be a bit depressing. But anyway, yeah, so natural isn't always natural. Look for organic, look for recycled. And then also look for certification. So we touched a little bit on that about why it's important for integrity in the presentation. But if a brand's using recycled material, that's great. But with the rise of more sustainable materials, it's important to check that it's verified. So that's looking out for labels and logos like the Global Recycled Standard, or if it's organic, you can look at Forgot Certified. There's also a few others like Organic Content Claim. But yeah, try and look for those logos that basically verify that that brand is actually committed to ensuring that that recycled material, that organic material is indeed, what it says it is. And then you've got check for labour standards. So, you know, we've got a lot of independent brands out there that love to have a cute little label that, you know, that says that it's made with love. I'm sorry, but I just don't think that's good enough. It doesn't, good intentions don't mean anything. And so, yeah, I think check if a brand has an ethical sourcing policy. You know, do they have international labour standards like Fair Trade, SA 8000, Fair Wear, FLA? You know, do they pay their workers a living wage? Have they published their suppliers online? Are they transparent? And then, yeah, lastly, obviously, if you do love a brand but they don't have much information, you don't necessarily need to shame them, but ask questions, you know, get them excited, make sure that they know that you as a consumer care about what they're doing. So ask them how it's made, what are their climate goals, who made it, what are they doing to work towards environmental impact, minimizing their environmental impact and maximizing their social impact. So yeah, in a nutshell, hopefully those are some practical steps. But yeah, it's really just about like asking questions, slowing down, and yeah, just trying to do your best. And don't feel guilty. Like everyone, so many of my friends go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I got this from like, you know, H&M or whatever. And it's like, that's fine. Just wear it, love it, wash it responsibly, make do and mend, you know, and then pass it on to somebody else to love. We can't be perfect in every aspect of our life, but if we can, you know, make some small changes, we can make a big difference.
I think that's everything we tried. Sorry, we've gone over time, but
sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I think I'll jump in and say a huge thank you to Amy and Kelly for such a great and thorough kind of rundown of everything at Piping Hot. It's truly remarkable to see a brand doing so much good work in that kind of lower, you know, into that space where it's at this kind of cost where price has been such a driver of consumption in places like Target and whatnot. And really cool to get the background on that. So thank you so much. I'm not sure if anyone had any burning questions, but we will be able to pass any of those on to the team if you have them, and we'll be making, as long as the recording turns out the way I hope, we'll be making this recording available afterwards as well. Before you go though, Amy and Kelly, I need to ask you one favor. If you just want to stop sharing your screen, that might help. And I was just going to ask you, I have the list of our membership in front of me with a number next to all of them. It's random, got bees buzzing around me at the same time, but I just wanted to see if you could pick a number between 1 and 110 just to announce our first monthly winners of our giveaways. So go for it, any number.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to say 75 just because that was the year that Piping Hot started.
So, well, there you go. That's a good one. Well,
so on brand.
that's on brand. And you know what? Is he on the call or not? But Russell Flanagan is our first winner. I'm going to highlight his name right now. He is the first winner of the monthly giveaway. He was number 75 on my list. So that's really awesome. So I'll let Russell know. He's going to be the recipient of a little giveaway pack, courtesy of Patagonia, Epoxy sunglasses, and Vissla and Sister board shorts. So really cool little prize pack there. Before everyone goes, we're very much over time now, but look, huge thank you from us at Surfers for Climate for all of you for jumping on board at the early stage of this initiative, and also to Piping Hot. You come up with ideas and you think that they're pretty cool, and then you only really find out after a lot of self-doubt that they're okay when people start to jump on board and show their support. So a huge thank you from us. This helps us pursue our mission. It really helps us try to build this sea roots movement that we're trying to build in surfing, because at the end of the day, surfers should be the obvious custodians of the coastline when it comes to these issues like climate change and ensuring that we have clean oceans and thriving oceans, and the next generations can enjoy that space as well. So it's really important that people like you show up, make decisions, and put your best foot forward. So a huge thank you from myself, from the co-founders, from the board, and everyone at Surfers for Climate for jumping on board. That's kind of it for this first webinar. So thank you all so much. I'll hit stop record, and yeah, I guess please stay tuned for the next one. If you've got any friends that you feel like should be in the Supply Club, please feel free to get them in touch with us, get them aware of it. It's Christmas soon. If you like to buy gifts, a Supply Club membership is a wonderful gift. It keeps on giving and it helps them change the world. So feel free to help out however you can. But just being here today is a huge thing for us. So a huge thanks for that.